Sponsoring the show today is UW-Madison Just Research Program. Black folks are all too often left out of health studies. That means that treatment and medications are created based on what works for other groups, even for diseases that put Black people more at risk. Just Research is a program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison working to reshape how health studies are done so that they meet the needs of all. To do that, right now they are asking Black men and women aged 40 and older for their insights and thoughts about health studies through a short online survey or interview. If you are interested, call 608-709-9470 or email justresearch@ictr.wisc.edu. Hey, this is Henry Sanders back with you with another episode of Real Talk. We want to thank our sponsors at Park Bank. Thank you for everything. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for getting us wonderful content out for our wonderful leaders and most influential people, influencers in our state and around the country. So thank you for Park Bank for doing that, giving us that platform to do that. We really appreciate it. If you want more of this content, make sure you go to our YouTube page or our podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Go check that out. We have a lot of content on there I think you'd appreciate. So today, now y'all know I'm a Madison guy, and I'm y'all know how I feel about Matt. But I've been trying to reach out to Milwaukee more, right? Because Milwaukee is really the mecca for Black folks. I mean, Milwaukee has so many Black folks and Latino folks there. It's crazy how much people they have there. I know I give y'all Milwaukee folks a hard time for not having a Black mayor at this point, but that's cool. Hey, I'm not going to take shots at y'all right now. It's all love. But okay, I'm just saying, if it was Madison, we'd have a Black mayor right now. I'm just telling y'all. Facts. Okay. Let's start this off on a place of peace, a place of justice and peace. Today, we have a man I really don't know well, and I'm actually looking forward to hearing this interview. I've known him. He's made our most influential list. He's a man who, as a people, we should be very proud of, who's excelled in what he's done. He is a municipal judge in Milwaukee County. Judge Derek Mosley, how are you, sir?
Henry, I am fantastic. Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it. It's actually a pleasure, man, because I've been like a distant admirer of yours for some time. I love what you're doing. I love that you're putting out the positivity in the community, and I'm just glad I have an opportunity to sit here and talk to you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Appreciate you and all you're doing, and we consider you family. So let's have a family conversation.
Likewise.
So right now you're sitting. Look at you. Are you like you're in the? It's a flag behind you. Are you in your courtroom? Or where are you at right now?
Yeah. So a municipal court, we're actually virtual. So we do both. We have an in-person, but I'm actually virtual. So this is the background for our court. This is. What we use.
It looks nice though. It literally looks like you're there.
Right? It's got the logo.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just I don't know much about you. I know about you as, you're a municipal judge in Milwaukee. I know that you got COVID, you have the kidney transplant, all that stuff, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But other than that, I don't know much about your story. So are you from Milwaukee originally?
Yeah, so I'll give you my scoop, man. So I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised in Chicago. Then folks, we moved out to the southern suburbs of Chicago. What got me to Wisconsin, man, was Marquette. I got a full ride to go to Marquette, and I came to Marquette, and I kind of fell in love with Milwaukee in a number of ways. I met my wife here in Milwaukee at Marquette, and I loved the city of Milwaukee, right? So Milwaukee was this city that reminded me a lot of Chicago, but didn't have all that drama, right? And so I thought that this was a place where I could actually, land and do good things. Right? Chicago's an interesting place, right? So if you grew up in Chicago, when I was growing up, if your last name wasn't Daly or Madigan or something like that, you weren't getting many places, right? And so I didn't have any influence like that. So what I liked about Milwaukee, it gave me an opportunity to do things on my own, right? I had to set out on my own and set my course on my own, and Milwaukee provided that for me. So I got nothing but love. Like you in Madison, I got nothing but love for Milwaukee.
Yeah, I love Milwaukee. Yeah, I'm just giving you a heart. I love y'all. I'm just saying, come on. Okay, so you grew up in Chicago. You were I always give you a hard time, but so you grew up in Chicago. Did you grow up in, like you said, you grew up in Chicago, or you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago? There's a difference.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in the city, and then we moved out to the suburbs during my grade school time. So I went to grade school, Catholic grade school, in the suburbs of Chicago, and then just stayed out there. But most of my family, all my family on my dad's side is from Chicago. So all my time was spent in the city. It was just the place to be, right? Come on, it was Chicago, and so it was the place to be. And my mom's side of the family is from Colorado, from Tulsa, but then moved to Colorado. So I got shipped every summer to Colorado. So I spent a lot of my summers in Denver. So Denver and Chicago are like my home. So Denver, Chicago, and Milwaukee are sort of like my trifecta.
Yeah, and Denver's nice. I mean, Denver, especially Aurora out there, that's where a lot of black folks live, in the Aurora area. So Denver's nice. I like Denver. It's a nice
that's where all the wealthy black folks live, out there in Aurora and Cherry Creek. And, Denver's great, but it's the kind of place where nobody leaves, right? It's so nice to leave.
Yeah. Okay, so when you went to Marquette, did you go knowing that you wanted to be, was it law? Did you want to know you wanted to be in law, or what did you? Yeah, Henry, this is the greatest. This is a great story. So growing up, I didn't know any black lawyers, right? I didn't even know there were black lawyers. And what got me on the whole black lawyer kick was, and I don't know how old you are. Maybe I might be dating myself, Henry, but there was a TV show called L.A. Law, and on that show was a young named Blair Underwood, and Blair Underwood played a lawyer. And that was the first time I had ever seen a black lawyer on TV. Wow. And he was this young, good looking, had the Mercedes, was living in LA, had the nice condo overlooking the ocean. And I was like, man, that's where it's at. And that was the first time I'd ever seen up close. I mean, I didn't even know him personally, but seen a black lawyer. And so that's when it came into my head that, this might be something I want to do. And then I don't know if you remember when Law and Order first came out. There was a black prosecutor on that show by the name of Paul Robinette was the character's name, and he was the only brother on the show, and and he was a prosecutor. And I saw that, and I thought, man, brother's doing that too. And so that's what got me on the path of prosecution. Yeah, I'm a weird situation, Henry. I was like a latchkey kid growing up. So I would leave school, have a key around my neck, go home, put my key into the door, and then close the door, and wouldn't do anything else. And so I say this, and now it's sort of like bad, but TV kind of raised me, right? Because both my parents worked, so I was home by myself, and so I just watched a lot of TV. And so a lot of my career has been TV oriented, just to give you an idea. So I saw the movie Silence of the Lambs, right? I think you saw that, right? With Clarice. Yeah.
Saw that movie, and I was like, you know what? I want to be an FBI agent. So I interned with the FBI out in Washington, D.C. Wow. And I thought that might be something I wanted to do. So I worked out there for a full summer, working with the FBI at headquarters. Thought this might be the way to do it. And then while I was at the FBI, they said the quickest way for you to get in, since you're not military, since you're not law enforcement, is to go to law school. And so I was like, you know what? I'll go to law school. And I already had that in the back of my head with those characters I seen on TV. And so went to law school thinking I was going to become an FBI agent. And, while I'm in law school, I'm realizing that I'm allergic to bullets. And so it might be a good idea to do something else. And then a movie came out called A Few Good Men. You heard of that movie?
Oh, yeah.
The Truth?
Yeah, You Can't Handle the Truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that movie and I thought to myself, you know what? Those are lawyers. They're in the military. I'm going to try that. So I interned with the Army JAG Corps as a lawyer for the military, doing defense work on Army bases, and thought that might be it. And then once again, that allergy, Henry, that allergy to bullets, and I figured that might not be the way to go. And then I fell back on that law and order, and I became a prosecutor.
Okay,
and that's what started.
What's interesting is my dad's an attorney.
Okay,
so I grew up.
Awesome.
I grew up seeing attorney and everything. So I get what you're saying, though. I remember, especially when I was growing up, the Cosby Show was around, but there was not. What was the spinoff from the Cosby Show? Different.
The Cosby Show. Oh, different world.
Different world.
Yep.
And I remember my brother, younger brother, he went to TSU, actually going to Historical Black College, but he says the same thing, like that. He saw that. He's like, oh, there's historical Black colleges out there. Like what? Like it blew his mind and that shaped him. And I was a latchkey kid too. I actually started staying home by myself in third grade. Right. So and I know it sounds crazy to parents now, people today, but I stayed home. I come home, unlock the door. Like you said, I stay in, I would watch TV. TV literally was I watched the TV. I remember I was sitting in the kitchen, just watching TV till my mom and dad came home. And then I got in sports and later that changed, but the TV raised me too. And it's interesting now. I would be scared if TV was raising my kids today. I would be scared of that.
Yeah. You brought up a really good point, Henry. So you talked about, that you were a latchkey kid at, in third grade, and people would think that kind of crazy. I think about the things that I did. Same thing, a young age latchkey kid. I learned to ride the subway, the L in Chicago.
Wow.
On the L, I was a young kid. I was probably like 8, I don't know, around there. And I'm with my dad. My dad's like, I want you to go over to that map and I want you to look and I want you to find Belmont. And when you find Belmont, I want you to tell me how we're going to get to Belmont. So I walked over to that map. I looked up, I saw Belmont, and I'm like, okay, we're over here. We got to get to Belmont. And I looked back to my dad and he jumped off the train and the doors closed. And he said, meet me at Belmont. And I just started crying, right? Here I am. You do that today, Henry, and they would put you under the jail.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to Belmont and he was there. And that's how I learned how to ride the hill.
I bet you did. See, and there's I'm always torn, right, about this because what it did for me, it gave me a lot of self-identity and independence. I literally learned how to take care of myself, feed myself, wash my clothes, always be self-aware of my surroundings. All those things helped me. The downside, though, is what you're saying. TV kind of raised me, and people in the neighborhood kind of raised me. Right? If your parents are gone, you kind of see what your boys are doing, so you kind of follow up with that stuff. So there's pros and cons to it. This generation kind of doesn't have that, right? Like my kids would never be home by third. Like, are you kidding me? Like that would never happen, right? No. So there's pros and cons to it, but it worked out for you.
It worked out for both of us.
No, okay, amen. I appreciate it.
Right, but you know what else it did, Henry? I'll speak for me. I'm not sure if it's for you, but it gave me a vivid imagination. Right? It made me imagine things that I didn't think of before. Like I talk to my daughter right now, and I don't think they have that same imagination we had. When I show them the Atari games and basketball for Atari, which was like this stick and you threw this square ball at the stick, they think that's garbage because their games are so real. They have no imagination. It's all real to them, right? And I think I got that from being a latchkey kid, that imagination.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like you had to imagine things because even our TV show, like MTV was just starting now. So you're right. So you had to imagine what things were. Like you didn't have social media. Like I'm showing my age right now. All these younger people like, whatever, old man, I get it. But like there was like you had to imagine. You had to say, what is this person really like, or what can be? The downside to it, though, I think this generation, they get to see so much more that they have access to so much more. There's pros and cons of that because you have to filter stuff. But okay, so you grow up, you go to Marquette. What happened? You go to law school at Marquette?
Yes. Yeah. And so what happened was I enjoyed Marquette. Marquette was a weird experience though for me, because when you get there, most of the people who are at Marquette are like second, third generation lawyers, right? And so the ones who weren't all look like me, right? And so we're just, we hung out. We had to find out where to get our hair cut, where we can go to buy music, where we can get some good food, some greens, and all those things that the traditional student at Marquette couldn't help me with, right? So I was like, hey, where can I get some good soul food? It looked at me like I was crazy, right? And fortunately, there is a professor at Marquette by the name of Phoebe Williams, and Phoebe was sort of like all of our mother. She represented this mother figure to all the students of color at the law school. And she told us where to get our hair cut. She told us where we can go get food. Back then, there was a place in Milwaukee was called Boobies. And she's like, that's where you can go and you'll see all of the Black professionals in there drinking and listening to blues and jazz. And so that's what gave me this connection to Milwaukee, right? That to see this side of Milwaukee that I never would have seen if it wasn't for Marquette's campus.
Which is interesting, again, because one of the things, especially being in the Madison area, Madison always has done a decent job for law school recruiting Black or people of color students. I mean, they've done that pretty well always. UW is a bad rep on a lot of things, but they actually have always done a pretty good job with Black lawyers. But it's interesting, a lot of those students and the university, though, are disconnected from the rest of the community. So you had a mother of the university where there was intentionality, and that probably helped you stay in Milwaukee, right? Because you got to know the community.
Definitely.
Right? And so that's interesting that happened. Where his brother said, where is the greens? Where do I get the greens?
Right. Where can I get some good, I was like, I remember I was from Chicago. I was like, where can I get some Harold's chicken? Harold's chicken here? Yeah, Harold's wasn't up here yet, so they didn't know nothing about that. So it was, it was nice to have that person here. And now what's so crazy, time has passed so much that I've become that person now.
For me too here, yeah.
Young cats who are at the law school right now. I'm the one saying, you need to go over to Daddy's soul food if you want that meal. Or you need to go over to here and there.
Well, okay.
G's for a haircut.
Okay, Judge. Well, hold up. Let's stay here for a second then. I'm coming in from Madison or Green Bay of Appleton or wherever, and I'm coming to Milwaukee. And I want a culture experience. I want the Black culture experience. Like my family, we used to go always for Speed Queen. Like we used to go to Speed Queen all the time in Milwaukee, right? That was one place we used to go. But you tell me, give me 3 restaurants, Judge, that you say, okay, here's where you need to go get the true Black experience of Milwaukee. Where are those places?
All right. So I'm going to give you, it might be more than 3, Henry.
Okay. Give me the experience, bro. I'm with you.
So let me tell you this. So prior to COVID, I would go once a week to Mr. Perkins. Mr. Perkins is a soul food restaurant on Atkinson in Milwaukee. And I would go to Mr. Perkins because Mr. Perkins was a place where all of the old timers have breakfast every single morning. And so I would walk in and I would get an education every time I walked in. As soon as you walked in, everybody knows you, right? So I walk in and be like, Judge, you come on and sit down. I get my plate of grits, my plate of eggs and grits and bacon. And we would sit and talk. And I'm telling you, there's nothing better than old Black men to talk about what you want to know about the city of Milwaukee, right? They will tell you the truth.
The brutal truth. The brutal truth.
Right? I would do that once a week, and that would be my spot. And so COVID has changed that because they had to change their hours. They had to go to a carry-out sort of menu because it's tough to eat indoors, but it's starting to open up. So Mr. Perkins was definitely one. You mentioned Speed Queen. And when I first moved to Milwaukee, Speed Queen was the place. Everybody went to Speed Queen. That was the place where we get, really good barbecue. But now we got a couple places. So Ashley's Barbecue on Center Street, 15th and Center, that is off the chain. So that's another one that I would go to for good reasons. In fact, no disrespect to Speed Queen because they were the grandfathers of it all.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Speed Queen in a minute. Ashley's Barbecue. And if you haven't been to Heaven's Table Barbecue, brother, you are missing out.
Even the name, Heaven's Table.
Oh, man,
whoa,
Heaven's Table.
No pressure there.
Man, run by Chef Jason Alston, a chef here in town, brother, grew up in Milwaukee. He lays it out for you. He's got and if you go, you got to get the Mosley platter. It's a platter named after me, a meat platter named after me. You got to go and check it out, man. It is.
Hold up. Judge, hold up. Okay, hold up. Slow up, Judge. Did you just say there's a Mosley platter? What did you say?
Yes, sir. The Mosley meat platter.
After you.
2 sides. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay, Black man. Okay.
So
okay. That's official.
If you want ribs, if you want tips, if you want mac, if you want yams, if you want grits, if you want brisket, they even smoke salmon on Fridays. Man, come on. Chicken, everything. So that's another spot. So you've got Ashley's, you've got Heaven's Table, and if you want a good down home Southern place, we've got, man, I feel bad. I can't even name one, Henry. There's so many. So I can go from, you got Daddy's Soul Food. Daddy's Soul Food, that's where you get your yams and you get your mac and cheese and your greens and your black eyed peas and your chicken and smothered pork chops, all from there. There's also Big Daddy's Soul Food, same type of food there. There's Plate Pleasures. Man, Henry, I'm gonna tell you, things have changed. It used to be, you walk into Soul Food, it was Mr. Perkins and it was the Bungalow. And the Bungalow was the place where all the Packers, the Bungalow would cater to Green Bay. They would drive that food up to Green Bay. But now we have so many good soul food restaurants that, I mean, you got a nice little rotation. You come, I got you. We're gonna hit,
bruh.
We'll hit everything.
Yeah, you don't talk slow. When COVID's over, and I get my second shot coming up soon.
Okay.
Let me know. Then I will be. You know what? The one thing about COVID has made me appreciate and miss is the state of Wisconsin, being out. Because I used to travel a lot, and there's so much stuff to do in Wisconsin. Like, Wisconsin's just a beautiful state. We have our issues like every state, but it's just a beautiful state to get around. But I want to get to Milwaukee. Because I don't know that. I need to get out there. I didn't know all the places you're talking about. So I'm kind
of a foodie too, man. So I like to get out and eat. Milwaukee's. Whew.
I just want to see the culture, right? Like, I have a lot of family in Milwaukee. Like I bet I have 100 cousins in Milwaukee. Literally, but I don't really get there much. My dad sent me there a lot. I don't get there much often from that perspective. I get this for work. It's not from the culture experience anymore. So I'm down. I'm coming, Judge.
Okay.
I'm coming, Judge. I
got you.
Okay. All right. So all right, Judge. So you graduate from law school.
Yes.
And then what do you do?
And then I become a prosecutor. Yep. So I got hired by the, truthfully, I wanted to be a public defender. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a public defender in Milwaukee, but Milwaukee wasn't hiring public defenders. The office was full. So the only public defender job available was in Hudson. And Hudson's kind of a ways away, right? So that wasn't for me. And so there was a young African-American prosecutor who came up to me and said to me, "Hey, I seen you in court. You've been interning with the PD's office. Why don't you think about becoming a prosecutor?" And I said, "Well, it's not really my bend, man. I'm more about, protecting people's rights and blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, that's what we do, right? It says when you're a public defender, you ask the prosecutor to do this for your client. You ask the judge to do this for your client. Okay. When you're a prosecutor, you just do it." And so that resonated with me. And so I joined the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office from that spot on. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. I did. I was initially signed downtown doing misdemeanor work, stuff like that. And then they shipped me out to children's court, which I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but I stayed longer than my initial term because them young brothers and sisters need to see somebody African-American. And so I stayed for that reason. There were no black judges out there. I was the only black prosecutor out there. So the only black face they saw was me. And so I stayed out there for that reason.
How did black folks feel about you being a prosecutor? Because, that means you locking folks up. And that means you locking people up who look like us.
Right.
So how did that work? How did the black community receive that from you being on the prosecutor side where you're actually locking or helping lock people up?
Sure. So here's the thing about being a prosecutor, especially in Milwaukee. 99% of the victims of the defendants who are black, right? So,
wait, hold on. I need you to say that again, though, because I think that's a real statement.
99% of the victims that defendants commit crimes against, black defendants, are black victims. So if you look at it that, oh, well, you're a black prosecutor, you're just locking up black people. No, I'm also representing black victims. The person who was shot, the person whose house was robbed, the person who was wronged is black too. And so I looked at it from that standpoint that, black victims as well. And also, I guarantee, the good thing about being a black prosecutor is that you are the one who makes the call on everything. So when something comes to you in the form of a case, so a police officer comes to you and gives you a police report, you read it, I make the initial decision whether or not it goes any further. And truthfully, I wouldn't want anybody else in that position but me, right? Somebody who my eyes on it to make sure that all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed, make sure nobody's rights were violated. That's who I wanted to do it. I would want someone like me to review a case if I came before them, right? And so that's the way I viewed it, and I treated it that way. And I think I gained respect of the community and gained respect of the officers that came in and brought their cases because they knew the case had to be on point.
That one, I want people to know that also when white people do crime, it's mostly against white people too. I bet the numbers are very similar. So don't get shocked when you just said
that is true.
Right.
But we don't have a white on white crime. You don't hear that. But we make sure that black on black crime.
Well, I was trying to say that, right? Like, come on, this right. I'm with you. I just want people to think, oh, we're talking black on black. No, that's not what he's saying. No. He was answering my question of saying, well, how do black folks feel about you locking up black folks? And what I heard you say, Judge, is that's true. I am, but I'm also locking up people who've actually
wronged black
people, right? So I'm also helping our community be safe. Did you enjoy that part of the job? Because I could see being a judge and you being a prosecutor. How did that weigh on you? Like, do you leave that job? Like, when I could see that job weighing on you because you really have people's lives in your hands.
Right.
How do you take that job and leave? How do you balance that? Can you balance it? How do you balance your sanity, your mental health, your emotional health?
Yeah. So Henry, it took a toll. And it took a big toll for a number of reasons. So I'll give you the first one. So when you are a black prosecutor and you're trying cases, there's nothing more disheartening than sitting in a courtroom and the defendant is black, his attorney's white, you and the defendant are only black people in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. And then they bring in a potential jury pool. And when they bring in jury pools, they bring them in 20 or 40 people, and then you pick your jury. And you look at this jury pool, and the entire jury pool is white. And so you see the jury pool is white, the judge is white, and the defense attorney is white. And then the only two black people in the courtroom would probably be the bailiff and me and the defendant. And so that, we are a system that prides itself on having people judge you, being judged by a jury of your peers, right? And so the problem with Milwaukee, and in many respects, Wisconsin, is that we are so segregated as cultures, right? That blacks and whites do not interact as much as they should. In Wisconsin, more than probably anywhere else I've lived, there hasn't been that much interaction, so that we know so little about each other in many respects that this isn't a jury of your peers, right? This is just a jury of Milwaukee County residents. And so that weighs on you. And then, when I left Children's Court, I was in the drug unit. And then at the time I was in the drug unit, I was the only drug prosecutor in the entire state. And so the thing about that is when you're the only drug prosecutor, black drug prosecutor in the city of Milwaukee, every drug dealer knows who you are. And so no matter where you go, no matter they know who you are because, they ain't too many 6'2" bald-headed brothers walking around, who are drug prosecutors. And so it was important for me, no matter what you did, you are still a human being, right? You are still a citizen of this state, a citizen of this country, and you should be treated fairly, and you should be treated with justice and treated equally as everybody else. And so I found that once people realize that that's what you are doing, it changes their perspective of you. So despite the fact that everybody knew me, I treated people with respect. And even defendants who appeared that I was prosecuting understood that. I'd be in a bar, Henry, and this is honest to God truth. I was in a bar once, and I'm sitting there, and the bartender comes out and hands me this drink. And she says, "This drink's been bought for you by the guy down the bar." And I looked down the bar, and that was a dude I had in court. And he brought the drink. And so I just had to ask him, like, what was up? And he's like, "Hey, what happened didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen. But I respected the fact that you treated me with respect, that you held the police to a standard, you held me to a standard, and I respected that." And that goes a long way. When you treat people the way they should be treated, then they inherently feel that the system is fair. But the problem is people aren't being treated the way they're supposed to be treated. And that's why people feel the system isn't fair. They see people getting things that they didn't get. And why aren't they getting that? Why didn't I get that sentence? Why are they recommending jail on my case? And when people see that, they feel the system's inherently unfair.
Yeah, I think you give a really good reason and logic why we need people of color in positions of prosecutors, judges, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I think I heard you say is basically when you look at a case, something comes to you, you have empathy. You have more of an empathy, but you can look from a true lens of the law, obviously, and respecting the law. But you can also check those biases or other judges or people might have bias. I'm not saying you're saying other judges have biases. I'm saying the system has bring biases to the table.
Sure.
You have through it. You have from your experiences. Everyone has to judge. Everyone has to live through their experiences, and so you can see it from that perspective. As being a black man, you have a broader perspective on the black experience, and from that perspective, and you obviously know the data, all that stuff. So you can you bring that to the whole table. I think that's important. I never thought about it from that perspective. That gives me a lot to think about from that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a prosecutor, judge, but I want to dig back into your health issue because I know, I know that you had some health, like you had a kidney transplant, right? So
right.
And then you had COVID. Was the kidney stuff? Was that how far ago does that go back? Was that because of stress on your body, because of the work? And I could see the mental, emotional stress of doing that job. Right.
Yeah. And so the kidney issue was a hereditary issue.
Okay.
So in 2014, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. And end-stage renal disease is basically what it says, right? End-stage, meaning your kidneys are failing. And so, and once your kidneys fail, that's it. Kidneys never get better. They just deteriorate, get worse and worse until they just peter out, right? So I started dialysis. But I worked, right? At the time I was diagnosed, I was a judge by that time. And so I was I couldn't just take off. Dialysis generally 3 days a week, 3-4 hours at a time. And I couldn't do that as a judge. You just can't get up off the bench and be like, all right, I'll see you guys in 3 hours, while I go do dialysis. So I did dialysis every single day of the week because I couldn't do it for that 3-hour period in the middle of the day. So I did it 10 hours a day, every single day of the week. So I would do it. I would come home from work and I had a dialysis machine at home and I would just hook up to the machine as soon as I got home from work, and I would do work, help my kids with their homework while I was on the machine. And then I would sleep on the machine, and then I would wake up and unhook myself and then go to work. And that's, I did that for 2 years, daily dialysis for 2 straight years till I was able to get the transplant. And
wow.
That makes you appreciate your mobility, right? Because when you're attached to a machine that makes sure you live, that changes your whole perspective. I just can't pack up and say, hey, let's go somewhere, because that entails bringing this whole machine, bringing in all the supplies. It's an ordeal. It is an ordeal. But yeah, so like I said, it ran in my family. In fact, my grandmother was one of the first kidney transplants ever in Chicago. And so we just have a kidney issue in the family.
Wow. Well, that's Well, one, it's good that it sounds like you got a kidney replacement. That's great. Do you have kids?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can.
Yeah. So I have 2 girls. I have a. Yep. Yeah, and I have a sister. So just so you know, so my kidney transplant, the perfect match would be my sister, right? But the problem is, I told you we had this kidney issue in the family. So I didn't want to take one of my sister's kidneys, and then 10 years down the road, that the kidney that she has left now starts to fail, right? So I was fortunate enough to have another judge, a judge out in Brookfield, a good friend of mine at the time, who decided that she wanted to give me a kidney. And to be honest with you, Henry, I didn't think it was going to work. I mean, we're complete opposites. I mean, I'm black, she's white. I'm 6'2", she's like 5'6". She's I weigh about 3 times as much as she weighs. She weighs about 130 pounds, 125 pounds. But she came back an exact perfect match. And so she donated, and I have her kidney. We'll be 5 years in July.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great story. It would make me a little nervous for my kids, right? I mean, you have to be super cautious about your kids, and that's a wonderful story, though. That's an amazing story of perseverance and endurance for you to go through that for 2 years, to be being a judge, and being the stress you have to do to live with that. How do you judge? How do you deal with the stress? I think, and I'm asking this because as a lot of leaders and people listen to this, and always my concern for leaders, especially of color, we have our health issues. It's all well documented. Diabetes, you name it, hypertension, you name it, we have it across the board. Yeah. And COVID has actually shown that in a broader way, right? But how do you deal with that stress of balancing all the demands of you being a black judge in a city of Milwaukee, and it kind of has all the challenges that Milwaukee has, and then being a father? Are you still married? Are you married?
Yep. Okay. Married. 2 kids. Yep.
A husband. Sound like you're in a community a lot. How do you balance all of that at the same time take care of your health? I mean, mental health. Like, what if people are watching right now? If there was a young lawyer coming up right now, someone going to law school, and who is ambitious, has big goals, sees you, say, I want to be the next Mosley. You know what? I want to have, in all those black restaurants you was talking about in Milwaukee, I want a plate named after me in every one of those restaurants. He got 1, I need 10, right? I need whatever he got, I need 10 of those. And so what would you tell those people? You know them young lions, I would say they're watching. What would you tell them how to balance it?
Yeah, so self-care is probably the most important thing. And you're absolutely right. So granted, I had a genetic history with the kidney disease, but make no mistake about it, the kidneys are, there's one vein, there's one artery that connects the kidney to your body, right? And it's a really thin artery. And what stresses that artery is blood pressure. And if your blood pressure is so bad, that one vein artery will just pop, and that will cause damage to the kidneys, right? And so that is a problem that you have to be aware of. Stress has an adverse effect on your health, a huge adverse effect. And we have this huge dynamic going on. There was a doctor who said that, when we look at our health discrepancies that African Americans have here in America, that they trace that all the way back to slavery. And when I tell you that, this is what they say. The theory is that if you were able to make that trip from Africa to the United States, that middle passage, if you were able to make that trip, doctors hypothesized that you are what was called a natural salt retainer, because that trip is such an arduous trip in the hull of a boat that for you to make that trip without the food you needed to survive, without the water you needed to survive, you would have to be a natural salt retainer. So the people who make that trip and survive that passage were natural salt retainers. Then we get to the United States, and we're not able to eat the food that the white families were eating. We were given all the leftovers, right? So we're given the fat bag. We're given the everything that's salty, heavily salty, heavily fatty. Those are all the things that we are given that made up our diet. but you're already a natural salt retainer.
It's like chitlins, right? Soul food. Yep.
So you're eating that food and you're already a natural salt retainer, right? So this food is having an adverse effect on you. So this has become generational, the diabetes, generational, the high blood pressure. And just to think that people think that things just happen in a vacuum. No, this is generational. This has been passed down. And now, people are breeding, are having babies with other salt retainers. And we're creating this whole group of salt retainers, which is why we have this high incidence of all these different types of chronic diseases. And so, so self-care is really important. When I say self-care, I mean, whether you do yoga or whether you do massages or whether you, like me, I just like to get out and fish. If you can give me a pole and put me on some water, I don't need anybody with me. Just let me sit. I don't care if I don't catch anything. It's just a time for me to be alone. It's a time for me to be with my thoughts. It's just me and this fish trying to get this fish to catch this worm, right? And so just something to take care of yourself. It's an interesting place. And Henry, I know you know this. Being African-American, you get to a certain point in your life and people want you to do everything, right?
Everything, yeah.
Always asking you could you do this? Will you sit on this board? Will you do that? Will you do that? And if you don't take the time to take care of yourself, you will find yourself just wasting away, and it took me a while to get there because initially, Henry, I was that guy. I was like, okay, I'll be on your board. Oh yeah, I'll be at that meeting. Yeah, I'll go speak to that group. I was everywhere, and then it becomes draining. And so it took me a while to get there because, when you're young, you think you can do anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so it took me a while, but I'm there now, brother.
All right. Me too. So this is wonderful advice. So if anyone who's out here listening, you're trying to figure out how to be effective, how to move up in the world. People, especially in Wisconsin, right? You're a person of color, professed person of color. People starting to ask you to be on this board, that board, whatever. Usually non-paying boards, let's be honest. But they want you to be on all these different things. Well, it's true, right? It's usually non-paying boards, but they want you to pull all these different places.
All nonprofits
want to take your intellectual property, whatever. That's fine. I get it. You have to learn how to say no. And I've learned this from mentors. I've learned this from people I've seen effective, from CEOs being effective. At some point, saying no is taking care of yourself, but also helping you reach your goals, right? Because if not, you get pulled everywhere else. Then you don't do anything well because you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. Then you're tired, you're stressed. And that's when that's when microaggressions start happening, right? They start saying, well, you're always late. Yep. Why are you always late? Or, your stuff's not always done at a high level. Well, wait a minute. That's because you got me on 20 different boards doing stuff. You got me running around the community doing A, B, and C. So and then I got 20 people calling me, what's it mean to be black? I'm trying to survive. And at some point to say, stop. Saying no is focus, right? Saying no sometimes is focus. If it doesn't help me reach my goals or help me for me, Judge, if it doesn't help me be my faith, and my faith is number one, in my family, in my business, if it doesn't fit in that stuff, I just drop it off. It doesn't help me reach those goals. I've learned to say no. It took me a long time to get there, though. A long time. So, Judge.
You and me both. And I'm here too.
Yep. So now, 2021, a judge, all the unrest going on in the community, you're in a unique position to be part of the judicial system, but still a black man, someone like has a black experience as a black man. Where do you see all this going as a black man and being in the judicial system? It's a big question. I know it is.
Yeah, I know.
Where do you see this? Where do you see all this going? Right. I mean, we had two pandemics going on, COVID. Now we have all, the police stuff going on. People are really upset. People are watching more. You're part of the judicial system as a black man. Like, where does that feel like? Where's this going for you?
Sure. So, Henry, what I did and what I do is I'm all on the education piece. And so what I realized when I was on the bench, the first thing I noticed on the bench is young African-American males, a lot of them get caught up in the system because they just don't know the system, right? And they may not be aware of what really is illegal. So what I've done is I do this thing that's called the People's Law School, right? So I like to go into schools, and now I'm able to do it virtually, right? So go into schools and to teach. I do a law school 101 class. And so I teach kids everything from as basic as traffic cases, driver's licenses, marijuana tickets, everything. We go through it all. Fourth Amendment, just so that people have an idea. You know, so there's a game we're playing. This life is a game. The problem is a lot of us don't know the rules. And so I like to use this education piece to tell the rules, right? To explain, this is what you have to be aware of. This is what you're looking out for. Don't make yourself a target, right? If you know you don't have a license, you shouldn't be driving a car with no plates, or you shouldn't be blasting music loud to draw attention to yourself. You know, there's things that you do that draw attention. Why would you want to do that, right? Like Lil Wayne says, I move in silence. I'm silent like the G in lasagna, right? You know, so you're just trying to stay underneath the fray. You don't want to be out there, out in the mix. And that's how I see a lot of people. It's crazy. Like I get someone in court and they're like, I'm like, well, why are you here? And I look at it's like, well, I was hanging out the outside the window of a car and screaming at people down the street. And I was like, why? We got pulled over. And when we got pulled over, they found marijuana in the car. I'm like, so if you know you have marijuana in the car, why are you hanging out the window screaming out the car? You know, so don't make yourself a easy target. And so education is the piece. And I think it's amazing because you think when you start talking about this stuff, maybe these young people aren't interested in it. Man, I can't. These sessions don't last long enough. They're just like, oh, it's over. I'm like, yeah, it's over. It's only an hour. And they're like, oh man, but what about this and what about that? And so my role as a judge is to educate about the system, to educate about the law, and to make sure that people understand. And that's how I frame it. And I have to believe it's been beneficial to those who go through. I'm not sure if you're familiar, Henry, with the street law program at Marquette. Mm-mm. So Marquette has a program called the Street Law Program where they train law students to go into MPS schools and to teach what I'm teaching, what I talk to these kids about. And so we're trying to make sure that these kids are educated about these issues before it becomes a problem. I don't want these kids to learn this stuff while they're wearing an orange jumpsuit sitting in front of a judge, right? I want you to know this beforehand.
Or street myths, right? Like the street myths about what you can and can't do, what you hear on the block, right? Like you know these street myths. And I actually agree with everything you're saying because I grew up with like I said, an attorney. So I was privileged to know my rights. Like if a police stopped me over, I knew my rights. I knew everything. I knew what I could do, what couldn't do. So I have trust me, I've been stopped for different reasons I shouldn't have, just being a black man, but I've never felt threatened. And part of that is because I was educated on my rights, right? So I always knew. And I always knew, okay, the police comes, don't provoke, whatever, but you get his license, like, you know, you get his ID, like, you're like, okay, all right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So officer, thank you. But we don't educate our kids about this stuff, right? So I think it's so important when I'm sound old again because I am old, but our older generation, like you talk about, you go to a restaurant and older men should talk to you. They would break it down with you. No, if this what happens, if a police officer does this, that, if you walk in the neighborhood, you see a police, like they would, even stuff was unfair, right? Like, you know, that's you're going to get bullet, but they still would give you the rules to the game. We didn't do that. We didn't do that for our youth. Like, here's the rules to the game. Like, here's what it is. It might not be fair, but here's the reality of the situation. Live to survive. Mm-hmm. Live. Yep.
The one thing I say, Henry, all the time to youth is that you might be on the street and that officer you might think is doing something wrong and probably might be doing something wrong. Do not fight that battle there.
Right.
Fight that battle with me in court. Come on into court and say, this is what happened. Because you will lose that battle on the street 99% of the time.
Absolutely.
And so I get it. I'm like, document everything.
Everything.
If you record, if your phone records, record. If you can shoot video. But don't fight that battle on the street. Fight that in court. Let me have that battle. Let me have that that conversation with you.
That's real. Police officer pull me over. I hit my record on my phone, voicemail. I record right away. And put my phone right there, and I don't. Yes, officer. No, officer. But survive to fight another day. Survive that to come back and fight the legal system. Okay, Judge. Before we got headed for a long time here, I ask everyone the same question at the end of the day, and I'm curious to hear yours. What your answer is? If you could have one superpower, Judge, what would that superpower be?
All right. So I'm a litigator by trade, right? I was trained to be a litigator. I wasn't trained to be a lawyer who's in the library researching stuff. I was trained to be in front of people, convincing people. There's nothing greater in my life than to sit in front of a jury of 12 people who don't know you and have them hanging on your every word. That is the litigator's dream, right? But the one thing that I would love to have is the ability to read people's minds. Oh. Because read people's minds, then you control everything, right? Because people will look you in the face and tell you one thing, but if you could actually look inside their head and see what they're really thinking, man, you could change everything. Everything. I know people want to be invisible and fly. Just let me be able to read people's minds.
Well, there you have it. The judge wants to get in y'all business. That's what he just said. He said he want to be in y'all business. You know? I kid you. I kid. Hey, Judge, thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for showing what I call Black excellence for our community. Thank you for having a heart for the community. And thank you for also, praying for your health. I know you had COVID and all those things. So thank you for just being also vocal about that. And we pray for you, and we'll hopefully get you back on Real Talk another time soon.
Henry, I want to say thank you for providing this forum, for allowing the whole thing you've been doing, not just this, the summit and all. I mean, I can't wait for the Black police chief one, or that one, that law enforcement one is about to be deep. So thank you so much for that, because those are conversations we haven't been having. So thank you for providing that avenue so we can have these conversations. Well,
thank you, Judge, and we should stay in touch. And thank you again. And thank you for joining for another episode of Real Talk. Again, go to our YouTube page if you want to see this. If you want to get a podcast, go to our podcast or wherever you get podcasts. And we will see you next time on Real Talk. Thank you.
This is 365 Media.